Hello, welcome back to the show, everybody. For those of you that are new viewers, I make this show to help teach all you tattoo lovers out there how to find the best tattoo artists for your tattoos. At the same time, I'm going to point out some of the red flags you can look for to avoid some of those hack tattooers out there. This week, I got an email from a viewer named Brian. He's out in Fort Worth, Texas, and Brian is looking for a tattoo artist that knows how to do black and gray realism animals, as well as geometric design work for the backdrop. Now, finding an artist that specializes in both of those is not an easy task, because in the tattoo world, those styles are kind of opposite skill sets of each other. But, at the end of the day, the Hack Hunter crew did deliver. We found the perfect artist for you, man. Stick around. But up first, let me show you guys some of the hacks out there in Fort Worth that you're going to want to avoid. Let's break it down. Alright, you guys, let's kick it off. Now, for all you guys out there in Fort Worth, I'm going to be honest. I found quite a few kind of old school, sketchy tattoo artists that look like their artwork and their techniques have not really evolved with the times, okay? But I'm going to point out this guy here. This is Tracy Novi, and he owns Fine Art Tattoo Studio. They do not have a website. You can find them on Facebook, though, at Fine Arts Tattoo on Facebook. Now, weirdly enough, the owner here, Tracy, has his own website, tattootracy13.com. So strange that his studio wouldn't have a website, but he has his own personal website. But on his website, he says, I've been a professional tattoo artist and done body piercings for over 20 years now. And that sounds a little funny, but you guys want to check out his 20 years worth of experience, you can see him on Instagram as well, tattootracy13. Again, I'll put it down below so you can click on it yourselves if you want. But why don't I just show you what his 20 years of experience looks like? Good! Here it is. Alright, you guys, lot to unfold here, lot to unpack. First off, this dog looks scared shitless. This dog does not. Usually when you hold the photo up to a tattoo you just did, you're kind of trying to compare that you did a good job, and look how exact this tattoo is, but man, this does not look exact at all. Couple of red flags in this one. One, whenever you got an animal that has a soft edge on the outside here, you can't just put a line there, and that's what he did wrong. You just put a line there, line on the top, line on the side. That looks nothing like the photo. What you need to do is soft shade a backdrop in there, a background that's darker than the image of the dog is, and then that way the dog will stand out. You won't get such a harsh cutoff here, since there's no harsh cutoff here. Second of all, obviously these eyes are way too light, way too light. They're supposed to be dark, and when you're doing realism, you copy it line for line, shade for shade. You don't just create shades and change it however you want to. Then it's not realism anymore. My last thing I'm going to irk about, and I saw this in his portfolio quite a bit. Whenever you see an artist portfolio where they literally just type in some letters on Microsoft Word and then stick it to you, just avoid them. Just walk away, because this is such an outdated, old school thing to do. Either you learn Photoshop or you learn how to freehand custom design letters. But just doing this pick and stick with the letters and the fonts is just really such an outdated thing. There's no reason that we have to do that anymore. Artists usually have a little bit higher skill set than that. Let me show you some of his other animals first, though. This is a weird tiger or lion with an afro, clearly coiffed here and brushed out nicely. just strange looking, isn't it? It's not just me, right? That's really strange looking. One of his ears is a little higher here too. Just again, realism is not his forte. One big mistake he made here. Some of you guys, if you watch the show, you're gonna know I complain about this all the time. The whiskers. So many times artists cheap out on the whiskers, and that's what he did here. He shaded the whole thing, and then later he dipped in white and he tried to blast that white over top of the pre-existing tattoo he just did. This only is gonna look white that day. That is not going to heal white, just because you can't mix white with black and hope it's going to stay white. It just doesn't work that way. So all these whiskers that he put in there, the silly kind of all matching whiskers, they're all flowing in the perfectly straight lines, and it's just not going to stay anyway. Just big mistake. Lets me know that he's definitely not a realism artist. But believe me, he tried it again and again and again. Throughout his career. Man, I've seen quite a few of these on his Instagram where it's just gnarly looking. Tracy, this is not your shit, man. You gotta stop doing portraits. Realism, it's just not yours. Obviously, he has a hard time blending out gray wash. All of his medium tones are just this beat up sort of red look to it. This lion, he didn't even do whiskers on. He just kind of left some negative space clumps here where you're supposed to imagine that's where the whiskers would go. But he still gave it this weird sort of coiffed afro on the top up here. Very strange. It's also really weird that he would use such a solid black in areas and then just a medium gray in others. There's no blend from like dark medium or dark gray, medium gray, light gray. It just goes from solid black areas to this weird medium light tone in the face, and it's going to stand out. When all this redness goes away and it heals, that gray is going to barely be there, but that black's going to be real harsh, and it's just not going to be appealing looking. Huh. A little bit of a throwback. A little bit of a throwback to the age of lower back tattoos. Now, I don't know about some of the other tattoo artists out there, but for me, when I was much younger, a decade or two ago, when I was being taught, I had a mentor that told me way back then, he said, if ever you have a female client, an older woman, younger girl, doesn't matter, they come in, and if they don't like the design that you drew them, just add some swirly shit. That is to a T what he told me back then, was just add some swirly shit, and sure enough, it worked. It worked back then. You could just add some swirly shit, and most of the time they would think it was just so beautiful. This swirly shit is called filigree, by the way, or floral filigree, or rosemelin. There's a couple different names for it depending on how you do it, but it looks like Tracy here is a big fan of it as well. It kind of lets you know he's an old school artist as well. He's been doing it a long time. The problem is he just did not seem to evolve. Look at how many lines are just not connected, missing in there. There's no real shading to speak of, just random kind of color blends. Very disappointing. This is a strange, a strange looking hummingbird. And I hate that he just did a straight line here. He did all the lines for the individual feathers, but none of them bump out. They would normally kind of bump out there, but he just did a straight line to call it good. And I don't know, maybe that's the style of artwork he was going for, but to me it looks very cartoony, very chintzy, very cheap. And I saw a lot of line errors in his portfolio. For somebody who's been doing it 20 years, you can just see how squiggly so many of these lines are, how they just don't connect in places. And some of these, like the top of the snake's head, you can tell he doubled and tripled over to try to make it look smooth. But in the tattoo industry, as artists, we try to perfect the concept of the single pass line. You go over it one time, smoothly, perfectly. You get the right amount of ink, the right depth, the right speed, everything the one time. Because if you're doubling and tripling over lines, this is what you get. Lines that don't connect, or lines that are bolder in some areas, thinner in others. It's just you can't damage the skin twice, but hope that it looks perfect. It's not going to happen. And I saw it over and over again. All of his fine line stuff has all these jagged and blotchy kind of lines where he just doubled and tripled over it. So, you know, a more skilled talent artist or experienced artist, one that was professionally trained, might try to use a bolder line weight, because bolder line weights are going to hide those shakes better. They carry more ink. They can be difficult in other ways to use, but a lot of times they hide these inconsistencies in lines. So I don't think, you know, if he's having trouble doing lines these thin, I don't think he should be using such a thin liner. Here was sort of a cover-up add-on piece. Again, here's the anchor, just jacked lines all around. But one thing that I really wanted to point out in this is you can see where this tattoo cover-up was, and there it is, right there in the cover-up piece. You know why? Because black and gray is not ideal for cover-ups. You have to use a really, really dark gray. And I try to explain this to clients all the time. It is a request that I've got many times. I'm sure other artists get it all the time. You want to get a cover up and you just want something black and gray. The problem is black and gray, or gray wash, is diluted ink. Okay, we literally are watering down black. That's how gray wash is created. And so when you're trying to color or cover something that's saturated, like color, you're not going to cover something saturated with something diluted, if that makes sense. Because this is the outcome. You can clearly see where that other tattoo is right there. And it excuse me, it pops out right up there as well. And that's why. It's just because this diluted gray wash is never going to cover up something that's so saturated like color. I saw quite a few pocket watches. Never seen one in his portfolio that really impressed me. They're all kind of chinsily done, cheaply done. And is it just me, or I know it's supposed to say Mason, but that is dangerously close to saying moron, isn't it? It took me a minute. I had to double check. A lot of these banners that he does also, I could tell that he's freehanding the lettering in there. And again, it's probably because he's just not proficient in Photoshop, so he's either freehanding the stuff or he's just, you know, trying to stick it in there off Microsoft Word. But yeah, overall, just very disappointing with these pocket watches. This one definitely does not look like a circle at all. Very, very simple shading in the inside. Just disappointing all around. Here was another one that he did. I'm not even going to talk about these roses. These are just so simple and weird. Weird shaped lines that don't connect. I don't even get why he would do that. I think he's trying to save himself the pain of having to do the high detail in the center of the rose. So he just really simplifies it to make it look easier, or to make it easier to do. But man, it just does not look good. But this pocket watch, really kind of jank looking, not to mention it doesn't have any hands. What happened to the hands? I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe the client asked for one with no hands, but the perspective is just totally off on this thing. It just does not line up proper at all. And I don't know why, but he chose to use it again on somebody totally different. Tell me that's not the same pocket watch. Come on, with that same weird sort of, I don't even know what you'd call it, pattern around the outside there. It's a really kind of quick done pattern. Oh, there it is again, the exact same thing. At least this one has hands on it. Here's the finished piece. There's the pocket watch there. I don't much like this at all, though. Somebody with a giant arm, you know, all of these individual tattoos could have been twice as big. But again, he did this lettering right here where he just printed it right off Microsoft Word, and that's why it's evenly spaced. It's not stylized. It's not decorative in any way, and it's really difficult to shade around or to create something, an amazing sleeve around a piece like that when it's just floating letters. So something that he really needs to work on. This is one of the last few I'm going to show you, though. Now, there's a mistake in here that I think that any client can pick up on when you're looking for an artist, and I think all you guys see it. It looks kind of funny in here, right? That's because the guitar's line right here lines up with the J in Janie, right? Is that a J? Yeah, J and Janie. Now, this is something when artists are designing tattoos, they got to watch out for this sort of thing where lines look like they might flow in two different directions. So it almost looks like that guitar line is following through there. But if he would have took a few extra minutes to kind of overlook his design and kind of clean it up a bit, then he probably would have avoided doing that altogether. And this is just a style flaw that if you've been doing it for 20 years, that you're gonna know that's something to avoid, and a lesson he probably should have learned by now. Not to mention, he probably should not have been taking on the neck of a guitar, the guitar strings, knowing that his thin line work is really shaky like this. So, all right, overall, at the end of the day, with Tracy's work, I didn't see much that I could approve of or recommend. I didn't see any good gray wash blending. I didn't see any good line work. I didn't see any good color saturation or blending. The cover-ups were terrible. Most of the designs were kind of cheap and outdated. So guys, I just do not recommend going to the guy. But the rest of you out in Fort Worth there, and Brian, stick around. I found one of the most brilliant artists in the same city. You're going to want to see him. Mind-blowing stuff. Here we go. Alright guys, before I move on to the next artist, real quick, I just want to remind everybody that if you're out there looking to get a tattoo and you want our help finding a tattoo artist, it's no problem. Just send an email to TheHackHunters@gmail.com. Let us know what city you're in and let us know what style of tattoo you're looking to get, and we'll definitely help you out. Alright, that's it. Now let's get back to the artwork. Alright now, Brian, if you're still watching, man, I almost gave up on Fort Worth, Texas. You had a really unique request out there. Like I said, a lot of artists that do realism might not do geometric styles and vice versa, but I'm so glad I get to show this guy to you, Jeff Williams. He is just killing it. He works at Dark Age Tattoo right there in Fort Worth. I almost told you I had to drive out to Dallas to find this perfect of an artist for it, but man, definitely go check out Dark Age Tattoo on Instagram, Dark Age Tattoo Studio, FTW. They got some brilliant artists there, and they got quite a few of them. I was very, very impressed. I wish I could showcase some more of them here, but I'm just going to stick with Jeff Williams. Check him out on Instagram as well, jeffwilliams.tattoos, and you're going to see why. This guy, when it comes to animal realism, I'm going to show you a few of those kicking off first. But one thing, let me compare these whiskers to what we just saw. Now, he does something very, very unique. First of all, he shades in between the whiskers like you're supposed to, and he leaves a negative space so that he can later put the white in. That's beautiful. That's perfect. That's what you want an artist to do, and he's definitely got the discipline and the dedication to do that. Now, next, he also did some black lining here to show that there's a shadow off some of these whiskers. The shadow off the bridge of his nose casts onto some of these whiskers. This is something so unique. Believe me, I see a ton of lion tattoos. I see a ton of different realism artists constantly. This is very, very unique what he's done here. And also, for him to use the what we refer to as skin breaks here, where he uses a skin tone as his negative white. Instead of trying to blast a lot of white in there and highlight everything, he just uses really intelligent placement for his skin breaks. I also love this lens flare effect for a backdrop. That's just beautiful. Also, here's another one, a tiger. This one he went with all white whiskers, but man, look at that. He had to take a tiny little outliner, the edge of his shader, whatever it took, just a few needles to get in and shade between there, and he kept the pattern of the tiger's face, where those black streaks, they streak through the whiskers. This is just something that's very challenging, very time-consuming, and you can tell that he takes his time. Look at all these little fine line hairs that he puts in there. That's what you want out of a tattoo artist. That is truly what you want out of a tattoo artist. Just brilliant, brilliant stuff. And I could go on for days. His portfolio was beautiful. I love seeing some of this monochromatic stuff here where he chose the oranges for the eyes and for the monarch. But again, just all this fine, fine detail in there. When it comes to black and gray realism, he's definitely got it down pat. This was one of my favorite ones. On his Instagram, he posted that he was actually collaborating with another artist on this one. And so this was the first session, and then this was the finished product that he posted later after collaborating with another artist. But I just think that is beautiful. I love the oranges throughout in the backdrop there. Yeah, I love the position of the owl. Some of this is out of focus, some of it's in focus, and that's one of my favorite styles of art when an artist is keen enough to create that sort of foreground and background appeal by using focus and in focus, or out of focus and in focus, and I think he did it masterfully here. This one was a piece I just had to show because look at this flag. In the last couple of episodes, I've done a lot of harping about how dog shit some of these flags are that you come across. Artists just take the real cheap, quick way because flags are time-consuming. They just are. No matter how small or simple you might think it is, to an artist, a flag is time-consuming and it's difficult. There's a lot of folds in here. There's a lot of just changes of tones that have to happen in small areas. And as far as a color flag goes, just look at how 3D and beautiful that looks. Just clean, just smooth. And he blended it very well with this gray foreground eagle. Just very, very clean stuff. Now, as for the geometric, I also found some geometric in his portfolio. I was super excited. Some of these pieces were a couple of years old, so fair enough. Gotta, be fair that I didn't see a lot of geometric in his most recent portfolio, but that's up to you, Brian. Go ask him, see if he's down to work with it. But let me show you some of these. These are all custom pieces, mind you. Oh, there's another eagle. Got in the mix there. I do love this eagle, this glare effect that he did with the backdrop smoke glaring off of his beak there. Really, really cool effect. Here's another one of the geometric ones, though. Look at how tiny and tight that detail is. Very, very clean, consistent lines. Completely opposite of what we just saw with Tracy Novi there. Very, very smooth lines. Here's another one. Absolutely a huge fan of how smooth he gradiates his grays. That smooth gradation from black all the way up to light gray is just brilliant. But then again, just how smooth each one of these lines are. Now, I guarantee you he has perfected the single pass line here. You can just tell by the way the skin around it's not super beat up, by it's not welting and bleeding like a lot of them we see. When we see that, you know that it probably means the artist had to go over the line a couple of times. Wow, this was my favorite out of all the geometric stuff. We got the honeycomb in the background with the space scene in there. I love the transition from the blue to purple up to these sort of magentas and reds and yellows. Just an amazing forethought went into this piece, okay? He had to do a lot of very meticulous planning before he dove in. You cannot just put these shapes down and then start coloring a squiggly space in there. You have to plan that out. And he did it just, again, masterfully. Very, very beautiful. I'm usually not a fan of when people or when artists mix black and gray with color, but my God, he does it in just such a beautiful way. For the rest of you, I'll show some other random tattoos that he's done that I was just very impressed with. This one, he wrote in the comments that the face was no bigger than about the size of a quarter. So if you can imagine that, that is an incredible amount of detail to cram into such a small space. But again, how smooth and fluent is that black and gray work? Very, very smooth. You gotta love that one. Beautiful picture of their puppy. I love these puppies that got multicolored eyes, different color each eye. But man, that takes a lot of time and energy. I love to pick his brain about what needle sets he's using in there to get such small, fine hair detail. I love the texture on the nose. Brilliant attention to detail there. Beautiful. Oh, and that crack work in the tongue. Just amazing stuff from Jeff. Oh man, the Black Panther. I gotta love this color palette, the mixture of the purples with the oranges and golds in the backdrop. Just a very intelligent color theory choice there. And then this one, my God. For all you artists out there that have done a Venom, you know that mouth can be a nightmare. Zooming in on that, look at all these different textures and color blends that are so close together for you to be able to get that texture with all that sort of slimy saliva coming out of it. I just had to do one recently. I know how much of a nightmare it is, and so to me, this is incredibly, incredibly impressive stuff. Jeff, you're a murderer, man. You're just killing it in this industry. You deserve all the success that you got, man. And to all you guys there at Dark Age Tattoo, you guys are just doing a great job. Please keep it up, and please be one of the guys that helps train the next generation of tattooers. I'd love to see more of that in the future. And of course... Alright, you guys, that's it for this episode. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that bell icon so you get notified. We put out new episodes every week. We go to different cities every week, and we might be coming to your city soon. So, stick around. We'll be back next week. And in the meantime, if you're hunting for an artist, don't forget to zoom in. Alright, we'll see you next week.